Hey, Jory, you're muted.
I was just saying we have double Brandons.
Can't just have one of me. Until I figure out
Double mint twins.
until I figure out what's going on with the screen sharing on Zoom. This is my workaround, which is to open one up on the browser tab. It's funny, it lets me share. It just doesn't let me stop sharing without crashing the app.
Well, I am meeting from dance camp / actually a coffee shop outside of daughter's dance camp. Sort of a busy-ish street, but it's outside. So I'm not gonna like rub it in that I'm like in the out of doors, which is a nice, pleasant place to be today. Some of you, Mike Brown's not on. I know he's a Texan and Texas is sweltering right now. So, but it's a nice, shady, beautiful Boston day today. So I'm gonna join you from outside.
I'll avoid this one time at dance camp kind of jokes going on.
Well, I mean, she's 7, so the biggest excitement yesterday, she came running when I went to pick her up. There was a rat in the dance studio. Just like, it's like, maybe let's not like scream that there was a rat in the studio in front of all the other children. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we get reports on. How was dance? We saw a rat. Okay, so I guess it's good.
There's an app somewhere online while you're talking about nice weather that is predicting the climate in the next 60 years for a location based on all the predictions and whatnot. And the Pacific Northwest looks like a really nice place to be in the next 60 years. So you got good weather now and you'll have good weather in the future. Just enjoy it. All right, kind of standard light turnout today, it looks like. I didn't have much on the agenda. I didn't put much on the agenda because I haven't had time to go through too many things. But if other folks have stuff for the agenda, feel free to chime in.
So I do want to remind us that we were looking at potentially getting a group together at KubeCon. It only comes to mind because I got a marketing mailer about it today. I know it's still a few days yet before folks are going to find out whether they are speaking, and that obviously makes a big impact. But what we want the OCI kind of presence to be at KubeCon in general, if it's meeting, if it's tabling, if it's something social, never too early to ask.
Feel like at a bunch of the ones I've seen, it's been a room with a microphone. They throw it on the Zoom as well for anybody that can't attend. They get a projector in there so that people can do a screen share. And then it's just kind of like a casual 2-hour meeting. We're really bad about making an agenda ahead of time.
Is that a problem that we want to solve, or are we okay being casual about the agenda? Are we laissez-faire? In which case, great. Or do we want, is that a problem we want to solve?
I don't know that we are the kind of group that solves that kind of problem. We're bad about that. But the surprising thing is, without an agenda, we still find stuff to chat about for however long. We have ways to fill time up, even if it's just watching John frantically fix some code, have Tina and I.
That's right. And the John Olympics last week, that was great.
Doesn't matter whether we have an agenda or not. We find some way to do it. All right. Well, take advantage of having the second screen here, or the second Zoom session, so that I can do a window share. Okay. So yeah, not much on the agenda. Rom, I will copy yours on there as well. I already opened it up, but I'll put that on the agenda since you were asking. And where am I over here? You'll definitely have time for this. So the one thing I put on there for both image and distribution is I opened up these issues over a year ago and never really did too much to follow up on it, but you can enable from GitHub security reports that people can submit privately. Just means I got to click a button over here and that turns it on for folks. I figure it's nice to have, lets people proactively say, hey, here is a security issue, and they don't have to go out and find the email address, something else. They just do it directly within GitHub, and then GitHub does a private issue for us that no one else can see. And so I felt like that was a good thing to do, and then I just never followed up on it. So unless folks have objections to it, I was going to do that later on today. But I figured I'll at least give the heads up both in the issue and here, just so folks knew what was getting ready to happen.
Is
Probably
there any
makes sense to do. Go ahead, Sasha.
No, sorry, finish your thought.
I was going to say, probably makes sense to do it on some of the other repos in the OCI project, but these are the two that I'm most focused on myself.
Is there any place we need to document this? I mean, wherever the email is, as an alternate mechanism so that people know.
In general, we should have a security file over here. Don't see it on this. Do we have a note in here somewhere? That should be something we have in general on the project, saying for security issues. Yeah, I don't see a security file there. I think we have an email alias that people can use. We have used it before. Folks have come in and used that. I don't know who's on the alias, and that was one of the comments
we have the alias, and I actually wanted to do a review with like Sam, because Sam Karp is on the alias. I think Brandon, you're on the alias as well. Just do some hygiene on those lists. It's on our summer to-do list for you guys. So I'd love to know who should be on those lists. Maybe start with that.
Yeah. I think the easy answer is to throw the TOB on there. That would be the quick and easy answer. It would be good to get someone, at least some key representatives from each of the various specs out there, if not every maintainer. I'm not sure how much we want to expand that out. But yeah, Tianan is saying both. And that, I would not object to that. Does mean you got a lot of maintenance to go through all those and find all the different maintainers.
The last one we did, it was pretty much Vincent who got everybody onto the issue for the manifest, and that was, I don't know whether there was a process at that point, but it was kind of a heroic effort is how I felt it was.
There are two aspects to this, right? One is GitHub itself does its own security scanning and starts filing security reports. The other one is whether people can file their own private security reports. So someone finds some issue and then they reach out to us in private and then file it.
Yeah, I would say the advantage of having this enabled in GitHub is that anybody that knows how to use it can just click a button. And it doesn't mean there's anything for us to do. As maintainers, it automatically shows up in our queue. Doesn't mean that we can't have other methods for people to reach out to us. And I think it would be good for us to still maintain that.
I wonder
Uh,
if, Brendan, you want to have like some standard kind of responses to support, because I think one concern might be that you get people using that in a not spammy way, but maybe when it's just a thought.
I have had on my own project, because I turned this on one of my own projects. I've only had a single person that reached out on my little thing that said, hey, here's an issue that I think is a security issue. And I looked at it and said, it's not really a security issue. And here was the link to where they can find more details publicly. People don't tend to use that unless they think that it's something that shouldn't go out in the public, from my experience.
Yeah, my experience has been the same, that people are generally pretty cautious about it. And maybe that's just because the feature's not popular enough yet. I don't know, I'm not gonna hold my hope too strong that that stays true. People always surprise me with their depravity. I think one big benefit of GitHub's security advisory feature is that it's already scoped to a particular project. But then we have the additional interesting thing of like, there's a lot of overlap between distribution spec and image spec. Is this a vulnerability in one or the other or both? The answer is probably usually both if they find an actual vulnerability in the spec. Like the media type confusion issue John found a while back that was really an issue with both specs. But, you know, we have to manage that bridge between the two specs either way anyways. So it's just wherever it was open tends to be the central point. We add the maintainers of the other spec and then we discuss on that issue and it's not a big deal. So if they're not enabled already, I'm in favor of enabling them.
Cool. I will flip the switch today. I think I should probably open up a separate issue that for both of the specs. Image spec needs some kind of contribution guidelines. We have some contribution stuff that says, hey, talk to us on the mailing list. I think we probably want a contributing markdown file somewhere in here, similar to what we've got over in distribution spec. And then in distribution spec, there is something that says, hey, for security, follow our steps under security, which is a 404. So we probably need to fix that too. So I will take care of enabling it today, and then I will probably open up issues for us to work on the contributing stuff separate from that. Go ahead, Jory.
I was just saying Tianan had a good idea. Also just send an email out, you know, to the list. As a heads up, no surprise.
Something that goes to that list that's not a spam message. I don't know if anybody's going to know to read it. We get so many bad messages over there. I wish there was a way to automate that more centrally instead of having it individual people have to do their spam filters. All right, so that was my action item. The other one to chat about, I wanted to bring this up. It's been a while since we chatted about it, but BBAT's way back wanted to do a subject reference that goes to any arbitrary blob, not just a manifest. And there was a bunch of back and forth and some pushback, and some of my concerns are no longer concerns because they were before then. I think Jason had some comments there saying, hey, it would be nice if we actually had some use cases that we need to do this before we start going through all the effort. And yeah, I've got similar concerns. I want to see some use cases, and I'm also looking at just how many API calls this would generate. If I had to look for or refer to every single blob and every single manifest when doing a deep copy of an image, that would be a lot of overhead for me. So I wanted to check with folks if it makes sense to go ahead and close this one out or not.
Are there any use cases blocked on this? I don't think so. As far as I know, no.
Should have scrolled down to this. There was one person that said, hey, I'd like to be able to do it for layers because they wanted to be able to associate the searchy and other kinds of metadata using refers instead of like an extra field in the descriptor. Just because they want to be able to attach it after the fact, I guess. So you'll need to do it separate from the manifest. Potentially, maybe there's a reason to do that, but then I'd feel a lot better if instead of doing on each individual blob, they just did one big refer for all the layers for the whole image.
Okay, so yeah, I think we should suggest workarounds here and see if that will fly. Maybe there is a manifest per blob. I don't know. There may be many ways to do this. So
yeah, we definitely have the way to do a manifest for an individual blob, and I think that might have been what VBAS was thinking of hey, how do we push some extra kind of metadata somehow in there and not have too much around it, but since you can make an individual artifact per each thing.
yeah, because this seems to be a very domain-specific requirement. And therefore, if there is a workaround for it, I think we should suggest that.
Oh, we got John on here now. We got Tina. We got a few people around. Anyone else have thoughts on this before I take a unilateral close on, say, not planned?
I would support that.
You know, support closing it out?
Yeah.
I would also.
Okay. I feel like that's enough of a consensus to me. All right. So I think I said that I'll be going fairly quick. So I think that gets us to Ram. You wanted to bring this one up again.
Yeah, so I think this is contingent upon evidence that yes, pushing things in parallel does speed up at least on absorbing the blobs. Yeah, so that is yeah, I'm trying to just set up a test to make that happen. But again, that is going to depend on individual scenarios, right? So you can always, so if you just take a serial hash like SHA-2, then it will depend on the core speed. A single core can run only so fast, and therefore, and depending on the core, it can absorb so much. But you can always have situations where the incoming rate can overwhelm a single core, and the other way around, where the incoming network links or disk links are so wimpy that you can do your hash rate can be faster than that. So both are possible. But in the scenario where where we can actually push things in parallel and speed up things. Maybe that is something to think about. So the implications here are instead of giving a 416 as the response code, you probably want to give something like 200 something or whatever the other non-error code is, and that alone should fix it, in my opinion, at a high level. So let's see. I just want to gauge how much interest there is and interest in actually absorbing this, at least working on this feature, right? So what if people at running their cloud registries can actually see some performance gains when you push things?
So I'll
It
ask,
could, yeah, it could be anything actually. A single client, single registry endpoint pushing in parallel versus pushing in serial. That itself, if there is a benefit, then then that's something to think about.
yeah, the question I threw in chat was trying to think about this from the bigger registry views, where I don't know how much they're concerned about saturating a single core and leaving the other cores unused because they've got more than one user talking to them concurrently. And so I would imagine that all the cores are going to be used generating digest for multiple uploads that are going on simultaneously.
If you paid for the course, might as well use them modular the power requirements. But so
Yeah,
the other thing I would
but-
like to point out is don't the use case is actually pretty broad, right? It could be an embedded system, it could be a public clouds, clients and public pushing to public clouds inside a private cloud in a data center where you're likely to have faster links and things. So it's pretty broad. We should not think narrow it down only to a clients on public internet, right? So that's what I would like to point out.
But what I'm saying is that it's not a broad use case. It's a very focused use case you're looking at where it's just a single user uploading a single blob to a registry that's dedicated to themselves. Once you start including hundreds of users uploading stuff simultaneously, a single core being associated to a single user is uploaded and a concern because there are a lot of other users all uploading simultaneously.
All of the above.
John, I see you chatting, but I don't hear you. Maybe you picked the wrong mic. I can see the I hate Zoom and I'm going through the settings menu right now. Look. We'll give him a minute. Go ahead, Ram.
Yeah, that's all I had actually. So I just want to gauge interest on this. Is it worth pushing a fix for this, or do we want to wait? Or do we want to wait for Blake 3?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, the answer is we should wait for Blake 3. Who cares about resource usage, Brandon? Yeah, so like from a registry operator perspective, supporting this kind of sucks because you, instead of being able to calculate the digest as it gets uploaded, you have to re-download each chunk sequentially and hash them because SHA-56 is not a Merkle DAG. But Blake 3 is, and so I think that's much more appealing to me. If we get Blake 3 going, then like the hard part of this on the registry side goes away, and that would be real swell. So I'm for this. I don't know that anyone's going to implement this happily with SHA-56. And I was thinking like there are, if you have very fast blob storage next to you as a registry, which usually you do, then this isn't terrible. But if you don't, and you have like an edge registry that's talking to blob storage, maybe somewhere else, then you know, this ends up being annoying. I think it may end up being slower than if you uploaded it sequentially, so that we could just hash it the first time, right? So that, yeah, that's my insight is this is a great idea if we have Blake 3. This is not the best idea with SHA-56, but it's still workable, just annoying. So let's get Blake 3.
So we got an open issue to do Blake 3 that's been out there forever. The way that that is written in image spec today, find that. Where do we have that? Is that in descriptor, I believe? Where we define the different algorithms here, and we've got 256 and 512. The comment that was brought up to me recently is that this implementations must implement SHA-256. Implementations may implement 512, which means anything we put in there to support changing the digest algorithm, the stuff that I've been working on, is all a may, because anybody implementing the image spec today doesn't have to support SHA-512. We've registered it, we've said here it is, but it's only a may, and so no one actually has to implement this client side, registry side anywhere. How would it look when we add Blake 3 to this list? I'm assuming that would still be a may for Blake 3. And then how do we handle the interoperability of everybody trying to support this or not support this? I see Sajay coming off mic.
I was thinking more about process. If everybody feels that Blake 3 is more of a should, then at least if we have the issues tracked, give it a year out, maybe things will happen. But right now, are we tracking this? Like we want Blake 3 in the image spec?
It's been an issue that's been open for a long while. And the one thing that makes me lean towards saying let's include it, well, a couple things. It's already in the Go Digest implementation. It's been there for a while. But we
Anybody
haven't-
brave enough to make a PR? Maybe it might be a 2.0 issue, right? If that's the case. But if it's a must or
It's-
something like that.
I think the question is it must, is it may, is it should? I feel like saying must is going to be very confrontational. The one downside to Blake 3 is it is not part of the Go standard library. You have to pull in third-party libraries for that. Some people hesitate when they see that. But otherwise, it's been in Go Digest for a long while. I feel like they might want to do some reorganizing over there to make it better supported, because it's in a separate directory right now. And at some point, they would have to do another release of Go Digest, because I don't know if it's in the 1.0 release that had been done way back.
All right, I wanted to give some silence if somebody wanted to say something. I think the value of this group is that if this group of people here feel like Blake 3 is the right approach, then we have an opportunity to steer people away from 512. But somebody's got to make the statement or saying that this is where we're going. And worst case is it's a little aggressive saying that we should implement it, but at least people push back. So I'm okay if we go down the path of, okay, let's make Blake 3 priority over 512 with a should.
I think that's uncontroversial. I think the hard part is like doing this in a way that doesn't break everything, sequencing the stages and making sure it's possible at least to do this in a way that people can incrementally adopt it. But yeah, I don't think SHA 512 has any like feasible benefit over Blake 3. What name did they pick, Brandon?
I think they just said Blake 3
Love
without
it.
any numbers after it, and they just said if you use this, you're doing 256.
I haven't thought super deeply about this, but I feel like probably a V2 makes sense at some point when we're talking about Z standard and Blake 3, and maybe not even tar. I don't know, but some intermediate step where it's possible to use Blake 3 on pools, where old clients aren't affected, and then eventually we drop SHA-256 altogether, so we don't have to compute it on uploads either. But doing that would break everything unless we have a really janky support path. So I don't know. I'm lumping this into like V2, but maybe there's some intermediate stage where we get partial benefits.
It seems like just adding support for Blake 3 as a May, just like 512, and then clients can start using it.
I feel like the advantage of the May is that it's the least confrontational here among us, because we can add it and then anybody can implement it as they want to. The disadvantage of we don't say should is that I think everybody's going to ignore it.
And this, like, there isn't really interoperability here, is there? Like a client either pushes Blake 3 stuff or it pushes SHA-256 stuff. And maybe you can understand both, but there's no mixing. That
Yeah,
really
the descriptor only has one.
makes sense to me.
Yeah. The getting
Reference
registries.
gain. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be
The
something people who really care about this can start using it, and it'll gain popularity, and registries have to support both, but there's not like a, I don't know.
but you have to convince registries to allow this in the first place.
Yeah.
Which I guess maybe the May is sufficient for them to beat them with it, but
I feel
I
like
mean,
if you say
from our
May,
point of view, like being able to get layers in parallel is, or like, upload layers, parallelized
Chunks.
layer uploads is, I think, a big win. That
yeah, the other thing that Blake 3 enables is you could do lazy, Sochi style stuff. And you don't need separate digests for every file because you can use like a Blake 3 slice to prove that that portion of the payload matches the overall digest, which is what I want to get to eventually.
yeah,
I think it's very fair here to just
Like-
say May for Blake and then, put the extra little sentence there that says, we intend to make this a must support, right, in V2. Something to that effect. They'll know that they probably need to start adding support for it. And yeah, the mixing is going to have to happen, right? We're going to still be in a mix environment. So a manifest may have one descriptor to one blob, right? That's 256 and another that's Blake. It's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
I
The
feel like implementations that are going to do this will be isolated cloud instances that are in the CI pipeline that builds it, the registry that stores it, and the runtime that's deploying it. And so they'll have the full end to end and they can upgrade to this because they'll get the better performance out of it within their own environment.
This may not be, sorry.
I was just going to mention, like, we often ask for proof and proving out of big changes like this. I think one way we can prove this out and demonstrate like the benefit would be um, experimenting with adding the Blake 3 hash as an annotation on existing layers. Not the registry doesn't know this is happening. Existing clients don't know this is happening. They don't care. But if a layer had a Blake 3 hash annotation on it, then instead of using the actual digest, you could verify the Blake 3 hash against that annotation. And it's very easy to benchmark. It's like, here, pulling this way, saved this much CPU or was this much faster than using the SHA-56. So
20 gigabyte LLM, for example.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and I would love to be able to demonstrate the lazy random access features of Blake 3 in the same way. Say, look, we have integrity without having to store like 1 million hashes for every file. So sorry I interrupted someone, but this is the in-between phase I'm thinking of, and not as like something we recommend, just as like if we're going to test this out in terms of performance, we can do it on the download side without breaking anything.
I feel like you can test performance, but it's going to open up a security risk, which is why I wouldn't want to recommend it. Because you now have a separate way of computing the digest in there, and so potentially you're talking different data than what was really in the DAG.
We already do that. We have diff IDs and digests. If you compute the diff ID as well, then you're good.
T-Non's over in a corner right now crying.
I don't
Agreed.
believe in diff IDs. They don't exist.
They can't hurt you.
They can't hurt me. John, the counter argument there is not that we're already doing this, but that we're actually doing something worse. We're calculating the digest twice or more than twice.
You have to.
Yeah.
But yeah, we could do it twice faster. We can make the first one faster.
Let's add another one, but this one's faster.
Yeah, that's fine. Everything's fine. No, I don't know how much value that has, but I'd plan to experiment with that if I ever find time.
I didn't have anything else to chat about, so if anyone else has other topics, feel free. If you want to keep talking about Blake 3, I don't want to cut you off. Implementing this on distribution spec, though, I feel like a complete rewrite of the conformance is needed. Because conformance right now is a single object going through. And so I was chatting about this last week. And so I want to completely rewrite that at some point. To do that, I'll probably want someone familiar with a little bit of the front end side of the actual report that gets uploaded to the website and how to format that, make it look nice. Because what I'm thinking about there is having a conformance cycle of push, query, pull, delete for every kind of data we would want to push up to a registry, whether it's an artifact, whether it's a formal image, whether it's an index, or in this case, Blake 3 or SHA-512. And then be able to give registries that run the conformance test the option to opt out of certain things and say, look, this is a May, I'm not going to run this part of the spec. Everybody gets very sad when I'm talking about redesigning the whole conformance suite.
Fork it first.
If you want to be more sad, look at it and try to figure out how to extend it right now. We have reached the capacity of how complex it can get without making things really painful.
Then the only question comes down to, okay, well, how do you want to do it differently? Start with Yumoki, or, you know, what?
So some of the stuff that's in there, I feel like I would completely pull out the way we're calling out to external test utilities and writing everything as if it's like a non-Go-ish language. I would probably go back to a much more standard Go format to make it easier for people that are maintaining it to read. The APIs, I would like to not have calls to externally managed implementations of this stuff. It would be a lot nicer if we were just calling the standard library with some small wrapper that we maintain ourselves. So that if we need to update an API call or something like that, we've got all that in-house. But I think the biggest part is that I just want to turn it into a big matrix that all the tests are running in this matrix of here are all the different kinds of data I want to push, here are all the different kinds of tests I want to run, kick them all through the system, and users can turn on and off individual parts as they see fit. If they don't implement refers, they just turn off that one test across all the data types.
Every should and may becomes a switch. Okay.
Yeah, today we drive all of this through environment variables. Maybe we want to make it config driven, I guess. So I don't know.
Yeah, the switch to turn things on and off, we'll sort that out at some point. But just completely redesigning everything that it can be turned on and off in some kind of matrix is going to be painful. And then once I do that, the way that we format our conformance output right now is just 4 little checkboxes of whether or not you implement all this stuff, and then your inputs of whether or not you ran certain things. And that's not enough for us going forward.
Well, you know how this works. If you're volunteering, do the work.
Well, I'm given the heads up that it'll need to be done at some point, and that adding Blake 3 into our list of supported digests is going to make that even another field in there we're going to have to worry about. So just thinking of the ramifications once we add another digest type, once we start adding more APIs that people don't want to necessarily opt into, that gets more and more complex. And I think redesign of the conformance is going to come sooner rather than later. In fact, I put my PR that's in draft even more in the freezer right now until we redo the conformance, because the way I was going through to try to do the conformance for how we upload content with different digest types, it just needs a complete redesign of the conformance suite itself before I want to push that PR out. All right, everybody's being quiet
Well,
now.
all I've done is reviews on the on the conformance. It's been okay. I understand what you're saying. Adding yet more parameters and more switches inside the functions, it can get a little squirrely.
The squirrely part for me is less if you add another API to that one workflow. It's if you add another kind of data you want to push across that entire workflow.
Well, that's what I was saying. You need another switch and another set of switch cases and all kinds.
But
yeah.
It's an entire parallel workflow. You end up doubling the entire conformance suite every time you add another piece of data.
Correct.
And
yep. Because there's custom options. Yeah. Custom naming.
It doesn't scale. Yeah.
Not very well. Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you, instead of saying there's just one kind of image that we run through all the conformance tests, which is the way it was originally designed.
Or you go in and variant type it, and then that's a refactor anyway. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Sounds like boiling the ocean is imminent. So
you got to pull the Band-Aid off at some point.
You would think the digest either way was a string, though. Does it really need? I'd have to look at the code. I haven't looked at it in more detail than I have.
The digest is a string, but you're generating it, and then you have to run it through all the workflows of pushing the blob, pushing the manifest.
Which
each one
could be a context value that's being. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we only generate one image.
Yeah.
For each kind of test we run, and so we generate an image for running stuff like tag listings. We generate an image for pushing content to a registry. We generate an image for pulling content from a registry. So we generate 4 images because we have 4 tests we run, 4 test chunks.
And they're all going to be Blake digests in this case. So
no, today they are all SHA-256, and that's it. That's all there is.
I'm trying to say, if you wanted to do another version of the test buckets, you'd have to add some context value, right? So a context set and a get for the type, and use an environment variable.
So to extend that one scenario with just 4 images for 4 kinds of tests, or pushing an index, or pushing an artifact, for pushing any of these things, there was a whole separate workflow that generated a new image that was then a whole separate set of variables that went through a whole separate set of, setup and tear down suites that just kind of got parallel and just.
And then you have to test all of the outliers. So yeah, I got it. Yeah. So you end up with double the test case.
Yeah.
Either way, you're going to have double the test cases. You're saying we could refactor it in a way that is clean.
Refactor it so that each one of these things is a kind of input that goes into all the tests, and then users can say, look, I don't support Blake 3 on my registry. Don't test any of these Blake 3 tests.
Or I support both. Or I got it. Right. Okay.
So every may or every should in our thing becomes an option you can flip off. We'll document that this registry doesn't support this thing. They told us not to test it, but everything else they passed.
Okay. Okay, so you'll have all of the existing test buckets rewritten and refactored in this new format. Yeah. But a table that can be run against that same code multiple ways. Yeah.
But now that we've got a table, our conformance webpage is a table today, but is a table of here's the person that ran all the V1 tests, here's the V1.1 test for test. We need a new front end on this thing, and so I'll be looking for folks that want to help participate in writing that kind of front end.
Okay.
I see so many hands going up simultaneously, I'm losing count.
Let's talk to Chris Hanks and see if we can get some funding. Or Jory.
This might be something Vanessa would have
I'm
fun
triple booked already, so I can barely get,
I feel like when Vanessa has shown up, she enjoys doing some of this front end stuff as well. So maybe if I ping her on the side and say, hey, you want some more stuff to do? She'd be like, hey, I'm a person with all kinds of free time. Not.
I was looking for somebody with free time, and I noticed that you're here twice. There's 2 Brandon Mitchells in my screen.
I just double it up so that I can share and stop sharing in the same Zoom call.
Okay.
On a serious note, like if there's a project, we want to get funding for, I mean, I think that's something to put on the agenda for maybe next week, just like to start to scope out. And then it's easy enough for me to go to Chris and say, all right, they want X much money for this project. Let's go. And I don't know that will be necessarily like the hardest ask on the planning. You do have a little bit of funding, so.
I don't know how much it's us asking for the funds versus us asking for a resource that can do it. And then however OCI wants to get that resource one way or another that can do it would be an OCI call.
They said yes once before. So maybe we can get another yes this time. And Brandon will help lead it.
Thanks, Mike.
I'm just saying, he who asks for the resource. Awesome.
I mean, Joy just makes me want to go to dance class right now.
Yeah, it's a nice way to spend. I mean, yeah. Well, I'll poke you, Brandon, about, you know, what we need to do to at least get the money part, but the person part, the resource part, that is a different question. And
I
maybe
feel
the
like-
harder question.
I feel like LF has people they have gone to in the past, maybe internal resources in the past to help people with documentation, front end kind of things, whatnot. So
Yeah, and we've got some, you know, contractors that some of our other spec projects have worked with. I think it's just more making sure we match the shape of the project with like what that person's good at. If you're looking for more like docs and engineering versus, you know, other kind like technical writing and that kind of stuff is a little different.
yeah. I think what I'm looking for is I've got the test that says yes, no. I want to turn it into a pretty web page that makes logical sense for people reading the web page. And this is a web page that gets generated for multiple people running the test. And so it's a handful of these boxes. Not impossible, but
it's not work on the test itself. It's just on like the presentation layer of the test.
it's
yeah.
just linking the output of the test. Tell me in
Yeah.
the test what HTML stuff you want me to generate, where to dump
Yeah.
it on this thing, how to run
Yes.
the recombiner code on the other side.
I know someone who may be like perfect for this, who actually pinged me today and said they were looking for, he did a lot of this presentation layer stuff for the JavaScript test suite. So I'll ask.
Cool. Now we've all got marching orders, at least the ones of us that spoke up. The rest of us that learned better, you can be triple booked on all your other stuff and stay that way.
Hey. I'll be curious as I see the PRs coming through. I have some suggestions, but just no time. I can never find the conformance results, by the way, on our pages.
There is an OCI-conformance repo.
Is there a link on the distribution spec?
Possibly, but
I don't see it anywhere.
everything gets, it should say in the distribution spec, when you do conformance, you need to check it into this OCI-conformance repo. And then
Yeah.
that goes to the conformance web page, which Rom just linked to. Beat me to it, Rom.
Okay, so we probably need to add a link to that
So
somewhere in the distribution page.
So yeah, it would be good to have more links to the conformance.opencontainers.org in different places. But
Yeah.
it's this OCI-conformance GitHub repo that we're going to need to say, here is what the HTML looks like. We're going to need to check in per conformance test. And then something inside that repo is going to have to say, okay, here are all the 15 different conformance tests that have run, including some people that did the old 1.0 and 1.1 versions of the conformance test, and how to merge that all together into making some kind of decent web page people can read. So, work to be done.
Where's the source for this?
I
No.
think it's all in the OCI-conformance, and then the distribution spec has a conformance directory in it. So if you go into distribution spec, go into conformance, there's a README in there that says, run this to tell us you're conformant. And then the source in there is the ugly stuff that I'll work on.
Yeah. Okay, maybe a couple, just need to add a couple links.
And there might be some links in here already. It's hard to keep track.
Yeah, I see the workflows repo, but yeah.
Yeah, the output should be in at least in a form, but is valuable for both registry operators and clients. That I think is the real value of it.
I think the complaint that I've heard from registry operators is when they run the conformance, and even non-registry operators, people are just looking to check an existing registry, that it's not clear from the conformance output why the test failed. They'll see it and it just says, hey, I didn't get a 200. I got a 400 error pushing this manifest, and the 400 was not equal to 200. And it doesn't tell you why that one test failed, and that we were testing to push some stuff with a refer inside of it, and the subject field wasn't valid, or the artifact type wasn't something the registry had on its allow list. Those are things we don't really have a good feedback to the user of. Here's why each one of these tests failed.
And if I'm a client that wants to talk to a particular registry, I want to know to what distribution spec version you are conformant to, or what APIs you implement.
Yep. Yeah, there are a bunch of users that come to us saying, hey, certain registry is not allowing me to push up stuff, my artifacts with refers in them. And we say, yeah, we know they're not OCI conforming. They're like, but they say they're OCI conforming to the web page. And you're like, well, that's OCI 1.0, and you're trying to do 1.1 stuff. And they haven't submitted their conformance results to us anyway. So even though they say they're conformant, yeah. All right, last call before we wrap this thing up. I think everybody wants 1 minute back.
I will poke you, Brandon, about this project.
Okay. Poke away.
Put this one on the at the meeting at KubeCon. I'm definitely going, so.
You are definitely, hey, got one person in the room. You can run the mic. Get your laptop hooked up to the projector.
Okay.
All right. All right, folks.
All right. Cheers.
See everybody next week. Take care.